This journey began about 12 years ago. It started with an article in the LA Times that I read. LA Times came to the door, picked it up, started reading. It was an article by a Salt Lake City librarian named Chip Ward. Chip was retiring. The thesis of the essay was about how libraries had become de facto homeless shelters, and that librarians had become first responders and de facto social workers. And it was a very moving piece. And at the end of the piece, he asked the question, what will you do? How can you help? Meaning the reader. And so I was, again, very moved. I had done the bulk of my research for my previous film, Bobby, at the downtown branch of the LAPL. So later that week, I went back to downtown, went back into the library, and started to just sit and observe and see if it was in fact as bad as things had gotten as bad as Chip Ward was describing in the article. And sure enough, it wasn't just about Salt Lake City, but it was about an epidemic that we are experiencing at the time across the country. And so I began to dig in, imagine a story of what would it look like if the patrons staged an Occupy. What if they said, it's a cold night and we're not going out. This is our shelter. Why can't it be overnight? And what would that look like to law enforcement and the media and local politicians? And how would they resolve this when the only question is, we would like to stay alive, which is not an unreasonable request in a first world country. And so I began to write the script, started developing it, and it's 12 years later, here we are. And it has been a very interesting journey, a very difficult journey. You can imagine when you are going from office to office and executive to executive here in Hollywood, and you're talking about making a film in a library that deals with homelessness and mental illnesses. It doesn't necessarily push the blockbuster button. But nevertheless, I persisted and pushed on, and now here we are with this film that has just gotten amazing feedback, not only from librarians, but also from homelessness advocacy groups, from social workers, people who are in the field dealing with the themes of this film on the daily. So I'm very pleased at the reaction and audience, and it's also very entertaining. So there's a lot of laughs in this film, and I think that helps to bridge the gap between something that is very, very serious and also something that can be accessible to audiences. I think my biggest takeaway from the picture, having now spent 12 years trying to get it made and then finally getting it made, and in the research to get it made, for me, I have really had to check my bias at the door. We all tend to want to assign a story about how an individual ended up on the street. We don't know what the real story is, but maybe it makes us feel better to assign a story. And I think that I have really forced myself to be a little more curious, to ask the questions if that individual is interested in talking about their struggle and their journey. I've been very fortunate to have many individuals open up to me. I also learned that homelessness is it's not a condition, it is a situation, and a situation that can be solved. So we need to try to figure out how to get to permanent supportive housing that's unconditional, that doesn't depend on you getting sober to get a roof over your head, or getting on your meds to get a roof over your head. Let's get a roof over your head first, and then start dealing with all of the other issues that an individual may be dealing with. So that's my big takeaway here. As far as the takeaway that I hope that people have after they see the film is, first of all, that it's an entertaining movie, that the film is full of humor, that it humanizes those who we may see on the street, those individuals experiencing homelessness, that they do have a story, and they do have a life. They had a life before they ended up in this situation. and that we humanize them and not other them. And I think that if the movie helps to start a conversation, continue a conversation, then it will have done its job.